When I posted my review of the Bambu Lab H2D a few months ago, the comments were split. Some people loved it, but there were a lot of people who wanted a lower price point and only one nozzle. If that was you, this machine may be more to your liking. Let's talk about it. Welcome back to Cloud42. My name is James, and this is the H2S 3D printer from Bambu Lab. They released the premium H2D model a few months ago, and as they usually do, they're now releasing a less expensive version without some of the premium features. I've had this machine for a few weeks, and I've got more than 300 hours on it, so I feel like I'm ready to share my thoughts. But before we get into that, some disclosures. This printer was provided to me free of charge by Bambu Lab. I agreed to use it and provide feedback, but it's up to me when or even if I want to show it on the channel. Bambu Lab isn't paying me any kind of fee for making this video or promoting their products, and they have no control over what I say, but I do participate in their affiliate program, so there will be a link in the video description, and if you use that to buy something, I earn a commission that helps support the channel. My goal, as always, is to be as transparent as I possibly can, so keep these incentives in mind when you hear what I or anyone else has to say. And if you happen to notice that a whole bunch of videos dropped at the same time as mine, that's just because anybody who got a unit before release had to agree to wait for the release date to publish their videos. So what exactly is this thing? The short answer is that it's the H2D minus the second nozzle for about half the price, or maybe closer to 60% of the price. The base printer is $1249, or you can get it in a combo with the 4-spool AMS for $1499. There is also a 10-watt laser combo for $2099. Now those are the prices today. If you're watching this in the future, feel free to leave me a comment telling me the current price is different. If you haven't seen my review of the H2D, you might want to go back and watch it, because this is largely the same machine. I'm going to hit the highlights, but if you want to deep dive into any of the details I don't go into today, that video may have what you're looking for. This printer is an enclosed Core XY machine with a 350-degree hot end and a 120-degree bed. It has the same 65-degree heated chamber and the same active cooling and ventilation system as the H2D. It has the same servo extruder motor, it has the same carbon air filtration, the same 5-inch touchscreen, the same live view camera, the same AMS options, supports all of the same filaments, and it also supports the vision encoder plate to calibrate the Core XY motion system if you need high accuracy. So what's different? Well, the headline difference is that it has only one nozzle. You can still do multi-material prints with the AMS, but the materials all have to be supported by the AMS. They need to be roughly temperature compatible, and the printer will have to purge the nozzle for every filament change, just like the X1, P1, and A1 printers. Now, as a practical matter, that mostly just means that you can't mix TPU with other materials in the same print. And for multicolor prints, there will be more waste because it has to purge the single nozzle between colors. But as a side effect of only having one nozzle, that one nozzle can now reach the entire bed surface. The H2D had areas on the right and left sides of the bed that can only be reached by one of the nozzles, making it difficult to print a single material object that fills the whole bed. The H2S, in contrast, can use the full 340 by 320 millimeter bed without any limitations. And that is enough room for a 7 by 8 Gridfinity tray, which is something the H2D can't print, at least not without some creativity. Now, in a lot of cases, the H2S also starts printing faster than the H2D because it doesn't have to spend as much time measuring nozzle offsets, but in some cases it's a wash because there's also a new bed probing routine that sometimes probes the bed repeatedly for high temperature prints so that it can tell when the bed has fully heat soaked and stopped changing shape. You get a much better first layer, but it can take longer to warm up. There are some other minor differences that most people won't care about. There are no side windows like the H2D has, and the purge, shoot, and wipe system is a little bit different. It still has the metal gate and the flicker plate, but it uses a silicone brush similar to the ones on the A1 series printers. The H2S does support the CNC blade cutter, the pen tool, and the 10-watt laser module, and there's a separate laser bundle with the green safety glass, the bird's eye camera, and the e-stop switch to support that, but it doesn't support the 40-watt laser module. That one is exclusive to the H2D. As far as reviews go, I don't really consider myself a 3D printing enthusiast. To me, a 3D printer is just a tool. It's not a hobby. I do think all the fancy technology in these newer machines is neat, but in the end, it doesn't really matter. What I care most about is if it works. Some people just love tweaking and tuning. I don't. I know how to do it, and I spent many years doing it. I even sold my own double extruder kit back in the day and modified the Marlin firmware to support it, but I am over it now. And I just want a machine that works the first time, every time. I want the manufacturer to tune the printer and the print profiles. I want the software ecosystem to be integrated end to end. I want the workflow to be simple, and I actually like the cloud services because they allow me to start a print and monitor it from anywhere. I know some people don't want that, but I do, and that's how I evaluate printers. As with other Bambu Lab printers I've tested, this thing worked right out of the box. I plugged it in, linked it to my account, let it run its calibrations, and just started printing. I've got over 300 print hours on it and maybe 10 kilograms of filament through it, and I have yet to see a failed job. It's been as close to zero drama as any machine I've ever used. I've kind of come to expect that from Bambu Lab machines, so it would be a surprise to me if they didn't deliver that experience. Maybe they'll let me down someday, but not today. I've tested other brands where this was absolutely not the case, so I appreciate the smooth, polished experience. The printer's also really quiet. I thought the H2D was quiet when I tested it, and the H2S seems to maybe even be a little bit quieter than that. It's similar, but the single extruder means that there's less moving mass, so there's less motion and noise from the machine overall. I usually have to actually walk into the room with the printer to see if it's still printing. I can't hear it from the hallway even with the door open. The loudest sound it actually makes is when the AMS rewinds the filament. One thing that always comes up in discussions of Bambu Lab printers is the RFID tags in the filament spools. Just in case you've been living under a rock, most spools of Bambu Lab filament come with an embedded RFID tag. The printer can read this tag and automatically configure itself for that filament. This information is also synchronized into the slicing software to automatically select the print profile, and it's also used at print time to make sure that you're printing on the correct spool. It also allows the printer to know when it has multiple identical spools in the AMS, so it can switch to a new spool when one runs out. Now, incidentally, the printer also uses the RFID tags to measure the spool rotation as the filament feeds, so it can estimate the diameter of the winding and show you how much filament is left on the spool. Now, some people on the internet seem concerned that this convenience will turn into vendor lock-in someday, and while that's certainly possible, it sure looks to me like Bambu Lab is moving in exactly the opposite direction. I just redid my entire kitchen with Gridfinity, and I used this eSun PLA Plus filament because I like the color. Now, Bambu Studio has a built-in preset for this, even though it's from a third party, and it prints beautifully. I had to select it manually because there's no RFID tag, and it can't show me how much filament is left on the spool, but they've clearly invested effort into creating and tuning the profile. The experience was every bit as good as the Bambu Lab filament, with one exception. The one exception is that the eSun filament comes on a cardboard spool. And of the 16 that I've run through my various printers in the last month, a couple have had what I call drunken spool syndrome. The sides are not glued on evenly, so they wobble when they roll and they can jam in the AMS, especially when they get near the end of the spool. And when that happens, the printer automatically detects it, it stops, unloads, and reloads the filament and tries to continue the job. But in 2 cases that I experienced, it got stuck and it couldn't recover. So it threw an error, I got an alert on my phone, and I had to go free up the jammed spool manually. And once I did that, I hit the button to continue, and it was able to finish the job. Now, they do sell refills for the plastic Bambu Lab spools, and they roll a lot better, but their windings are also a little bit looser, so your mileage may vary. The H2S supports the same 4-spool AMS2 Pro and the 1-spool AMS HT units as the H2D, and both support heated drying. I really don't have a lot to say that I didn't already say in my H2D review. They just work. I have experimented with a 4-spool AMS Pro 2 versus multiple 1-spool AMS HTs. The advantage of the AMS2 Pro is that it's simple. There's one cable and one tube, and if you're running all PLA, it's really ideal. If you run a mix of different filament types, a collection of AMS HT units on one printer is more flexible. It allows you to dry different spools at different temperatures and allows you to dry one spool while printing from another. It does cost more to outfit a printer that way, and it's a more complicated setup, but it might be more convenient if you're constantly printing with a lot of different materials. This might actually be the first printer I've ever tested where I didn't start with a benchy. I just jumped straight into printing a whole mess of Gridfinity for my kitchen. These trays are all printed in the eSun PLA Plus in bone white, with the top 2mm printed in brown for contrast. This is the same body color that Robert Cowan showed in his recent video. He used silver on the top edges, but I prefer brown for a kitchen. I used the built-in preset for eSun PLA Plus, and everything just worked. Some of these pieces are very large, and I had no trouble filling the bed of the printer completely. Often printers will have a large bed, but you can't practically use it all. Some cheaty printers I've used kink the tubing and break the filament in the back right corner, and other printers like the Prusa XL struggle with bed adhesion way out on the cooler edges of the build surface. Neither was a problem here. Every first layer was perfect, and you can see that these prints are very clean. I showed some of these off in a Discord, and one person actually asked me for macro photos to prove that they were 3D printed. Now, he was probably just being funny, but if you weren't thinking about it, there is very little here that screams 3D printing. I was so happy with the kitchen that now I've actually started working on the bathroom. Now, I purchased 16 kilograms of filament for this project, and I think I only have a couple of spools left. I've been running these trays on both the H2S and my H2Ds, and I can't see any difference except that the H2S has a larger usable bed area. I printed these chess pieces in Bambu Lab Metal PLA just because I'd never used it before and I wanted to try it. And they look great. These were printed with tree supports, so they're slightly rough under the overhangs as expected, but overall, they're pretty smooth. The seams on the parts are pretty obvious visually, just because of the metallic sheen of the filament, but they're actually pretty flat. If I close my eyes and run my fingers over it, I'm not totally sure I can even feel them. There is a little bit of roughness on the spherical tops of the pawns. That might be better with a different filament or more top layers. I really wanted to just try the metal filaments to see what they looked like. This cord hanger is printed in Bambu Lab PLA Basic, and it is clean. The bottom layer is perfect, the curves are smooth, and the surface is consistent. This part also has curved internal channels for zip ties to attach it to a tripod for storing video cables, and it also has a wide internal channel for a Velcro strip. The Velcro channel in particular has 25mm bridges on one of the walls, and it's clean. The strap goes through and follows the curved channels with zero drama. Any appreciable sagging in those bridges would ruin the part because it wouldn't be possible to get the straps through, but these are good. This is a prototype for an adapter plate that I'll be machining in steel in a future video. It's printed in Bambu Lab PLA carbon fiber just because that's what was in the printer at the time, and it looks great. This stuff always prints well and looks good though, so that's not really much of a surprise. Moving on to more challenging parts, this is the front control panel for my surface grinder project. This is printed in Bambu Lab ABS glass fiber. This is one of my favorite materials because it prints so clean, it's reasonably rigid, it's reasonably impact resistant, and it looks great. Getting big parts like this to come out flat can be challenging, but the H2S handled it easily. Having a large bed so the part isn't near the edges helps, and running the heated chamber at 60 degrees helps even more. The quality of this test part is better than what I was getting from the X1 Carbon, and it's pretty much indistinguishable from the ones printed on the H2D. This is a motor cover that I designed for my motorized grinding centers. It's printed in Bambu Lab PAHT carbon fiber, and it's also very clean. This is getting to about the size where nylon parts start to struggle a little bit with warping and bed adhesion. But with the heated chamber, something this size isn't even remotely challenging. I printed this with glue stick on the textured build plate and got this result with the default settings on the first try. Moving on to multicolor prints, I printed this cover for the VFD controls on my drill press in 2 colors of ABS glass fiber. I've been using this part as a test part for multi-material printers for years, going all the way back to the Cheedy iFast, because it clearly shows any color bleeding, oozing, or other issues. But this part is absolutely clean. 10 out of 10, no notes. I put it side by side with the one that I printed with the same filament on the H2D for my review of that printer, and I can't see any difference between them. They're both essentially perfect. The H2S took longer to print, of course, because it had to purge the single nozzle repeatedly, and it left a significant pile of purge waste behind the printer, but the resulting part looks the same. I also printed one in 2 colors of Bambu Lab wood PLA. This stuff can be difficult to print cleanly, but the H2S handled it well. Now the key with this filament is that it absolutely must be dried, even straight out of the package. It absorbs moisture aggressively because of the wood fibers, and any moisture really wrecks the print quality. Now I do see some color banding in places. This might be residual filament that wasn't fully purged, or it could be thermal effects caused by the longer layer times due to filament switching. More purge volume might help at the expense of creating more waste. And finally, I printed this tool tray for my surface grinder in Bambu Lab TPU 90A. This stuff is very soft and it won't feed through the AMS. I followed the directions, disconnected the feed tube, and used the port on the back of the printer to bypass the buffer. It's also freshly dried, and I fed it from a Polymaker dry box, and the result is beautiful. It's clean, it's smooth, it's shiny, and even the seams are great. The H2D didn't always get the flow dynamics calibration right for TPU in the early days, but this seems much improved in the H2S. Now I haven't actually gone back and tested the H2D again, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if it's improved there too. They release firmware updates with these kinds of fixes all the time. Bambu Lab's slicing software is called Bambu Studio, and it directly integrates with Bambu Lab printers and cloud services to send jobs and monitor printing. I've covered this before, and I don't really have much new to say about it. It just works. It's especially nice if you're using Bambu Lab filaments with the RFID tags, because the printer reads and identifies the filament. That information is synchronized into Bambu Studio, and you can just select which spools you want to use and send your job. Of course, you still have full control over all the parameters, and you can tweak to your heart's content, but if you don't want to, there's no reason you have to. You can just use all the defaults and get good results. Now, there's also a mobile app called Bambu Handy that connects through the cloud to monitor the printer and view the camera feed. It provides notifications and allows you to intervene if something goes wrong. Now, the internet will tell me that I shouldn't, but I routinely start prints right before leaving the house, and I monitor them from my phone. If anything goes wrong, I can stop the print or just pause it and deal with it when I get home. This is the part of the review where I give you the downsides and report everything that went wrong in my testing. But this time I don't have much for you. I had one print that had a bubble in the first layer where the filament didn't stick to the bed properly, and that was just because I handled the sheet and left a fingerprint on it. Cleaning the bed fixed it. I also had a piece of filament break off in the feed tube one time. It was an old brittle spool that I should have dried, but I didn't, and it broke. The printer detected that it couldn't load properly, and it stopped with an error. I had to disconnect the tubing, clear out the broken piece, and then it was able to continue without canceling the print. And I already mentioned the drunken spools from eSun that jammed in the AMS. I think the main reason things went so smoothly is because this is not a new printer. This is basically the H2D with a new extruder. It's largely the same hardware and software otherwise, and they've already worked out a lot of the bugs. The bed power modulation and the print profile issues that I reported in my H2D review were fixed, and those fixes carried forward to this printer. Now, it is also fair to note that I have a lot of experience with other Bambu Lab machines, and I already know which bed preparations work well with which filaments, so I didn't have to struggle through that learning curve. For what it's worth, PLA prints great on the bare textured sheet as long as it's clean. If you don't want to clean it, liquid glue will improve the adhesion without cleaning it. I also use liquid glue with ABS to get it to stick, and with PETG to make sure it doesn't stick too much. And I keep glue stick on the other side of the bed sheet for printing with nylon. So all in all, if you've been waiting for a cheaper, big printer from Bambu Lab, I think this is that machine. It's big enough to handle everything I've thrown at it. It supports all of the engineering filaments that I use. It has a heated chamber, and it costs about the same as the X1 Carbon did back in the day. That ticks all of the boxes for me. Now, if you don't need the large size or don't have the space, the X1, P1, or A1 printers might be a better fit for you, but I personally would have a hard time giving up the heated chamber. It still just blows my mind how far 3D printers have come since I built my first kit back in 2014. We truly live in amazing times. I hope you found this useful. If you did, and if you want to buy one, there is a link in the description. If you use that, it helps support the channel, but if not, no worries. I still hope you found this useful. Thank you for watching.